A millionaire CEO was forced to choose, lose all his money or marry the woman everyone mocked. A millionaire CEO was forced to choose, lose all his money or marry the woman everyone mocked. The late afternoon sun slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Noah Bennett's corner office, casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. His fingers drummed against the smooth surface as he scrolled through quarterly reports on his laptop. The numbers were good. Better than good. Bennett Industries had exceeded projections for the third quarter in a row. Noah leaned back in his Italian leather chair, allowing himself a small smile. At 35, he'd built an empire that older, more experienced CEOs envied. The view from the 50th floor reminded him daily of his success, a jungle of gleaming skyscrapers stretching toward the horizon. These profit margins should keep the board happy, he muttered, making a note on his tablet. The soft hum of his office's climate control system was the only response. The sharp click of heels against marble broke his concentration. His assistant never ran. It was beneath her carefully cultivated professional image. But now she burst through his office door, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Mr. Bennett," she gasped, her face pale. "We have a situation." Noah's spine stiffened at her tone. "What kind of situation?" "The Times just published an exposé. It's bad, sir." She thrust her phone toward him, her hand trembling slightly. "They're accusing the company of systematic wage theft, environmental violations, and exploiting overseas workers. They have documents, interviews with former employees." Noah snatched the phone, his eyes scanning the article. Each paragraph felt like a physical blow. Names, dates, specific incidents, all laid out in damning detail. His throat went dry as he recognized some of the documents quoted. Internal memos he'd written himself, taken completely out of context. "This is impossible," he growled, scrolling faster. "These allegations are ridiculous. That factory inspection report is from 3 years ago, before we implemented the new safety protocols. And that memo about cost-cutting measures, they've completely twisted its meaning." His assistant hovered nervously. "Sir, it's already trending on social media. Our PR team is being flooded with media requests. The stock price—" Noah grabbed his own phone, pulling up the market data. Bennett Industries' stock was in freefall, down 15% and dropping. Years of careful building, of meticulous image cultivation, crumbling in minutes. "Get legal on the line," he ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. "I want to know our options for a defamation suit, and get me Walter from PR. We need to get ahead of this narrative before—" His phone buzzed with an incoming call. The board chairman. Noah stared at the screen, his stomach churning. The chairman never called directly unless something was catastrophically wrong. "The board is demanding an emergency meeting," his assistant said softly. "They're concerned about investor confidence." Noah loosened his tie, feeling like it was choking him. The article was still open on his phone, the headline screaming accusations that could destroy everything he'd built. His eyes caught on a particular quote from a former employee. "Bennett talks about corporate responsibility, but it's all for show. The real Noah Bennett only cares about profit, no matter who gets hurt." The words struck deeper than he wanted to admit. He'd always justified his decisions as necessary for the company's growth, for staying competitive in a cutthroat market. But seeing it all laid bare like this, painted in the harsh light of public scrutiny. "Sir?" his assistant prompted. "What should I tell the board?" Noah took a deep breath, trying to center himself. The office suddenly felt too small, the view of his success now seeming like a mockery. He could already imagine the headlines tomorrow, the stock price plummeting further, investors pulling out. "Tell them I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said finally, his voice unnaturally calm. He looked down at his phone again, at the article that threatened to unravel his entire world. The words blurred before his eyes. Bennett Industries, the dark side of success. The empire he'd spent years building was balanced on a knife's edge, and he could feel it starting to tip. The mahogany-paneled boardroom felt more like an execution chamber as Noah Bennett faced the stern faces of his board members. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but it did nothing to warm the frigid atmosphere. 12 pairs of eyes bore into him, each filled with varying degrees of disappointment and anger. Marcus Sterling, the board chairman, sat at the head of the table, his silver hair catching the light as he leaned forward. The quarterly reports that had pleased Noah just hours ago now lay scattered across the polished surface, forgotten in the wake of the crisis. "The stock has dropped 23%, Sterling announced, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "We've lost nearly $2 billion in market value since this morning, and the bleeding hasn't stopped." Noah straightened his tie, maintaining his composure despite the sweat beading at his temples. "The allegations are largely baseless. Our legal team is already preparing." "Legal action won't matter," interrupted Victoria Chen, one of his earliest investors. She tapped her manicured nails against her tablet screen. "The court of public opinion has already convicted us. 3 major clients have already called to pause their contracts." "We need to take immediate action," Gerald Thompson, another board member, chimed in. His usual jovial demeanor was nowhere to be seen. "Something dramatic, something that will change the narrative." Noah's assistant stood quietly in the corner, taking notes and occasionally glancing at her phone as more bad news rolled in. She caught Noah's eye and gave a slight shake of her head. The social media response was getting worse. "We've already issued statements addressing each allegation," Noah argued, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Once we release the documentation showing the factory improvements—" "Nobody cares about documentation!" Sterling slammed his hand on the table, making several board members jump. "They care about stories, about perception. Right now you're being painted as a heartless corporate tyrant who profits off human suffering." Victoria leaned forward, her expression calculating. "What we need is a complete image overhaul, something that humanizes you, that makes the public see you as more than just a corporate machine." "I won't apologize for building this company," Noah said firmly. "Everything I've done has brought us to this crisis," Sterling cut in. He exchanged glances with Victoria, a silent communication that made Noah's stomach tighten. "We've been discussing options, and we believe we have a solution." Noah's assistant stepped forward, placing a slim folder in front of him. Inside was a detailed proposal that made his blood run cold. "Marriage?" he asked incredulously, looking up from the document. "You want me to get married?" "To someone with an impeccable reputation," Victoria explained, as if discussing a merger rather than Noah's personal life. "Someone whose presence in your life would force the public to see you differently." "This is ridiculous," Noah scoffed, but Sterling's next words stopped him cold. "It's this, or step down as CEO." The boardroom fell silent. Noah could hear his own heart beat, feel the weight of everything he'd built threatening to slip through his fingers. His assistant shifted uncomfortably behind him. "You can't be serious," he said, but the faces around the table told him they were deadly serious. "The board has already voted," Sterling continued. "We need to take dramatic action to stabilize the company. Either you agree to this arrangement, or we'll be forced to seek new leadership." Noah stood up abruptly, pacing to the windows. The city sprawled below him, the same view he'd admired that morning now seeming like a kingdom he was about to lose. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd sacrificed for, all of it hanging by a thread. "Who?" he asked finally, his voice barely audible. "We have several candidates in mind," Victoria replied. "Women from respectable families, with spotless reputations and strong community ties. The kind of person who could help rehabilitate your image. Noah turned back to face the board, his jaw clenched. His assistant caught his eye again, giving him a subtle nod. This was the only way out. "Fine," he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "I'll do it. I'll get married." The relief in the room was palpable, but Noah felt nothing but cold resignation. He'd built his empire through calculated risks and strategic decisions. Now, to save it all, he had to make the most personal sacrifice of his life. Sterling smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "Excellent. We'll begin arrangements immediately. Time is of the essence." Noah arrived 15 minutes early to Café Laurent, a discreet establishment known for its exclusivity and privacy. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the intimate space, while soft classical music played in the background. His assistant had arranged everything, down to the secluded corner table that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. He checked his watch again, adjusting his Italian silk tie. The board had been clear. This meeting needed to go well. His fingers drummed against the pristine white tablecloth as he waited, his mind racing through the talking points he'd prepared. The maitre d' appeared at exactly noon, escorting a woman through the restaurant. Noah stood automatically, his rehearsed greeting dying on his lips as he took in the sight of Jenna Martin. She wasn't what he'd expected. In place of the social climber he'd anticipated, Jenna wore a simple navy dress that spoke of quiet elegance rather than designer labels. Her dark hair fell in natural waves past her shoulders, and she wore minimal makeup that enhanced rather than masked her features. "Mr. Bennett," she said, extending her hand. Her voice was warm but measured. "Thank you for meeting me. Please, call me Noah." He shook her hand, noting her firm grip and the absence of elaborate manicures or flashy jewelry. Just a simple silver bracelet adorned her wrist. They sat, and Noah found himself studying her as she gracefully unfolded her napkin. There was something in her movements that suggested poise rather than practiced etiquette. "I assume you've been briefed on the situation," Noah began, keeping his voice low despite their private location. Jenna met his gaze steadily. "Yes, though I prefer to hear your perspective on it directly." A waiter approached with water and menus, and Noah waited until they were alone again before continuing. "My company is facing a crisis of public perception. The board believes that a strategic marriage would help stabilize our image and reassure our stakeholders." "A strategic marriage," Jenna repeated, taking a sip of water. "That's an interesting way to phrase it." Noah noticed how she held his gaze without flinching, despite the uncomfortable subject matter. "I understand this is an unusual request." "It's a business proposition," she interrupted gently. "Let's call it what it is." Her directness surprised him. Most people in his world spoke in carefully coded language, dancing around difficult topics with practiced ease. "Yes," he admitted. "It is, but I want to be clear that this would be a real marriage, legally binding, with all that entails." The waiter returned to take their orders. Noah noticed that Jenna chose a simple salad without hesitation, showing none of the affected deliberation he'd seen from others trying to impress him. "And what exactly would you expect from me in this marriage?" she asked once they were alone again. "Public appearances, attending corporate events, presenting a united front," Noah listed. "The board has prepared a detailed contract outlining—" "I'm not interested in contracts right now," Jenna said, folding her hands on the table. "I want to know what you expect from me as a person, not as a business asset." Noah paused, struck by the question. In all the meetings and discussions about this arrangement, no one had asked that. "I expect," he began slowly, "discretion, obviously, loyalty to the public image we need to maintain." And he searched for the right words. Mutual respect. Jenna nodded, considering his words. There was something in her demeanor, a quiet confidence that seemed at odds with her supposed background. "And what do I get from this arrangement?" she asked. "Financial security? Social status? Access to—" "Those things don't interest me," she cut in, her voice still gentle but firm. "I'm more concerned with understanding the man I'm being asked to marry." Noah felt off balance, unused to someone so easily dismissing the things that usually held such power in his world. Before he could respond, their food arrived, and they fell into a momentary silence as the plates were arranged. "This marriage," Jenna said finally, "would it be permanent?" "The board suggests a minimum of 2 years," Noah replied. "After that, we could reassess based on the situation." Jenna's expression remained neutral, but Noah caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Assessment, perhaps, or calculation. Despite her unassuming appearance, he was beginning to sense there was more to Jenna Martin than met the eye. Noah adjusted his tie for the 100th time, staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror of the private chapel's anteroom. The ceremony would begin in 10 minutes. His assistant hovered nearby, tablet in hand, checking off last-minute details. "The confidentiality agreements have all been signed," she informed him, her voice clipped and professional. "The officiant, the photographer, even the florist, everything is arranged exactly as planned." Noah nodded, barely hearing her. The weight of his decision pressed down on his shoulders like a physical burden. Through the window, he could see the small garden where only a handful of necessary witnesses waited. Board members, legal representatives, and a couple of Jenna's family members he hadn't met yet. "Mr. Bennett?" His assistant's voice cut through his thoughts. "It's time." The chapel was intimate, with warm wooden pews and delicate stained glass windows that cast colored light across the cream-colored runner. As Noah took his place at the altar, he noticed how the afternoon sun caught the dust motes floating in the air, making them dance like tiny stars. The wedding march began, soft and traditional, and Noah turned to watch Jenna enter. His breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple white dress that skimmed her figure, elegant without being ostentatious. Her dark hair was swept up, exposing the graceful line of her neck, and she carried a small bouquet of white roses. As she approached, Noah searched her face for signs of nervousness or reluctance, but her expression remained serene. When she reached him, she offered a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began, his voice echoing slightly in the small space. "We are gathered here today." Noah found his attention drifting as the ceremony continued. He was acutely aware of Jenna's presence beside him, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way she held herself with quiet dignity. This wasn't how he'd imagined his wedding day, surrounded by business associates instead of family and friends, marrying a virtual stranger for the sake of his company's reputation. "The rings, please," the officiant prompted. Noah's assistant stepped forward, presenting 2 simple gold bands on a velvet cushion. As Noah took Jenna's ring, their eyes met briefly. He saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, perhaps, or resignation. "I, Noah Bennett," he repeated after the officiant, sliding the ring onto Jenna's finger. "Take you, Jenna Martin, to be my lawfully wedded wife." The words felt hollow in his mouth, a performance for their small audience. Jenna's hands were steady as she placed his ring on his finger, her voice clear and composed as she recited her vows. Noah noticed one of her family members in the front row, an older woman with sharp eyes, watching them intently. "By the power vested in me," the officiant concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Noah leaned in, placing a chaste kiss on Jenna's lips. It was brief and formal, more of a seal on their contract than a celebration of love. As they turned to face their witnesses, polite applause echoed through the chapel. The receiving line was mercifully short. Noah shook hands and accepted congratulations, going through the motions while his mind raced. Each time someone called Jenna Mrs. Bennett, he felt a strange jolt of unreality. Later, as the small group dispersed and the photographer packed up his equipment, Noah stood alone in the chapel doorway. He watched Jenna speaking quietly with her family members, her white dress glowing in the late afternoon light. She looked like a bride, but he didn't feel like a groom. His assistant appeared at his elbow. "The car is ready whenever you'd like to leave," she murmured. Everything went according to plan. According to plan. Yes, everything had gone exactly as arranged. The quick, quiet ceremony, the minimal witnesses, the carefully controlled images that would be released to the press. Yet, as Noah stood there, watching his new wife say goodbye to her family, he felt a deep sense of unease settle in his stomach. How could something so important, so life-changing, feel so artificial? Noah sat in his office, scrolling through yet another news article about his marriage. The headlines seemed to multiply by the hour, each more sensational than the last. Bennett's whirlwind romance, PR stunt, or true love. Billionaire CEO marries unknown woman amid scandal. Inside Noah Bennett's secret wedding, his assistant appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "The media coverage is extensive," she said diplomatically. "Would you like me to prepare a statement?" Noah rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. "What are they saying now?" She cleared her throat and began reading. Several outlets are questioning the timing, suggesting it's a desperate attempt to distract from the company's troubles. Social media is having a field day speculating about Jenna's background. The business papers are more focused on how this affects shareholder confidence. A notification pinged on his phone, another article. This one featured a grainy photo of Jenna leaving a coffee shop, her face partially hidden behind large sunglasses. The caption read, "Who is the mysterious Mrs. Bennett?" "They're digging into her past," Noah muttered, his jaw tightening. "Have our PR team ready to—" "Already done," his assistant interrupted smoothly. "We've prepared statements emphasizing the private nature of your relationship and requesting respect for your new wife's privacy." Noah stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline. The marriage had been meant to stabilize things, to project an image of stability and traditional values. Instead, it seemed to have created an even bigger media circus. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Jenna. "Turn on Channel 7. He grabbed the remote and switched on the office television. A talk show panel was discussing his marriage, their faces animated with fake concern. "It's just too convenient," one commentator was saying. "Bennett's company is in hot water, and suddenly he's married to this unknown woman. The timing is suspicious." "But what about the bride?" another panelist chimed in. "Who is she really? No social media presence, no professional history we can find. It's like she appeared out of nowhere." "Exactly my point," the first speaker continued. "This whole thing reeks of desperation. Bennett's trying to salvage his reputation with a fairy tale romance, but the public isn't buying it." Noah muted the TV, his stomach churning. They weren't entirely wrong. It was a marriage of convenience. But hearing them dissect it so publicly, watching them question every aspect of the decision, made him feel exposed and vulnerable. His assistant cleared her throat. "Sir, the board is requesting an update on how you plan to handle the media speculation." Before he could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Jenna stood there, looking perfectly composed in a navy blue dress. "May I come in?" His assistant quietly excused herself, closing the door behind her. Jenna crossed the room and perched on the edge of his desk, her eyes falling on the muted television still showing the talk show panel. "They're having quite a time with us, aren't they?" she said, her voice surprisingly light. Noah ran a hand through his hair. "This isn't what I expected. The coverage, the speculation." "Did you think they wouldn't be curious?" Jenna asked, raising an eyebrow. "A powerful CEO marrying someone they've never heard of, right in the middle of a corporate crisis? I thought—" Noah paused, realizing he hadn't really thought it through at all. "I thought it would help stabilize things." Jenna reached out and touched his arm gently. "Noah, the media will always spin their stories, but we know the truth of our arrangement. That's what matters." Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they only intensified the knot in his stomach. The truth of their arrangement, a marriage built on necessity and convenience. As he looked at Jenna, so calm and collected while his world seemed to be spinning out of control, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The television continued to flicker silently, the commentators still debating their marriage with exaggerated gestures and concerned expressions. Noah's phone buzzed with more notifications, more headlines, more speculation. The carefully constructed plan he'd agreed to was unraveling in ways he hadn't anticipated, and he felt powerless to stop it. Noah had chosen an intimate Italian restaurant for their dinner, hoping the privacy of their corner booth would allow them to discuss the media situation. The soft lighting and quiet atmosphere seemed perfect for a serious conversation. Jenna sat across from him, looking elegant in a simple black dress, her fingers tracing the stem of her wine glass. "I wanted to apologize," Noah began, "for the media circus. It must be difficult having your life scrutinized like this." Jenna's lips curved into a slight smile. "Actually, I'm quite used to it." Something in her tone made Noah pause. "Used to it? I thought—" "You thought what?" she asked, her eyes meeting his. "That I came from a simple background? That my family was ordinary?" The waiter appeared with their appetizers, setting down plates of perfectly arranged bruschetta. Noah waited until they were alone again before leaning forward. "Your background checks showed nothing unusual. Your family runs a small business in—" "My family," Jenna interrupted softly, "owns that small business, along with about 200 others across 3 continents. Noah's fork clattered against his plate. "What?" "The Martins aren't just small business owners, Noah. We're one of the oldest private investment groups in the world. We just prefer to keep our name out of the headlines." The revelation hit Noah like a physical blow. He thought back to the marriage arrangement, to the board's insistence on Jenna specifically. Had they known? His mind raced through possibilities, implications spinning out in every direction. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jenna took a careful sip of wine before answering. "My family has specific requirements when it comes to relationships. They wanted to be sure you weren't just interested in our connections or influence." "So this was all a test?" Noah felt his anger rising. The marriage, the media circus. "The marriage arrangement was real," Jenna cut in. "My family agreed to it because they saw an opportunity. They wanted to know if you would choose me for me, not for what my family could offer." The waiter returned with their main courses, but Noah barely noticed the steaming plate placed before him. His appetite had vanished completely. "Your family could have saved my company from the beginning," he said slowly. "One word from them could have stopped this entire scandal." "Yes," Jenna admitted. "But then we would never know if you were capable of handling crisis without relying on connections. We would never know if you could choose love over power." Noah stared at her, seeing her in a completely new light. The quiet strength he'd noticed before now made perfect sense. She'd been raised in a world of power and influence, trained to navigate these exact situations. "So what happens now?" he asked. "That depends on you," Jenna replied. "My family has asked me to maintain this facade until I'm certain of your intentions. They won't reveal themselves or offer assistance unless they're convinced you truly care for me, not what we can do for you." The candlelight flickered across her face, casting shadows that made her expression unreadable. Noah felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The woman he'd married thinking she was a simple solution to his problems was actually the key to saving everything. But only if he could prove his feelings were genuine. "And what about your feelings in all this?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. For the first time that evening, Jenna's composed facade cracked slightly. She looked down at her plate, her fingers fidgeting with her napkin. "My feelings aren't part of the test, Noah. This is about discovering who you really are when everything is at stake." The busy restaurant continued around them, but in their corner booth, time seemed to stand still. Noah looked at the woman across from him, his wife in name, a virtual stranger in reality, and possibly his salvation or his downfall. The choice she presented wasn't really a choice at all. Prove his love was real or lose everything. Noah barely slept that night. He paced his penthouse apartment, his tie loosened and jacket discarded hours ago. The city lights twinkled beyond his floor-to-ceiling windows, but he hardly noticed them. His mind kept returning to dinner, replaying Jenna's words over and over. The soft hum of his phone vibrating against his desk made him jump. It was his assistant. "Sir, I've done some digging on the Martins as requested," she said, her voice crisp despite the late hour. "It's remarkable how well they've hidden their influence. They own controlling interests in major corporations across Asia and Europe, but through such complex networks of shell companies that it's nearly impossible to trace." Noah rubbed his temples. "And you never caught this during the initial background check?" "No, sir. Their security measures are extraordinary. The public records show exactly what they want them to show, nothing more." After hanging up, Noah walked to his home office and pulled up the marriage contract on his laptop. He'd signed it thinking it was a simple arrangement with a woman of modest means. Now, every clause took on new meaning. Had the entire document been crafted by Jenna's family lawyers? Had they anticipated this moment from the beginning? His phone buzzed again, a text from Jenna. "I know you have questions. Meet me for breakfast tomorrow?" Noah stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to refuse, to retreat into the familiar world of business deals and corporate strategy. But something else tugged at him. The memory of Jenna's genuine smile when they'd first met. The way she'd listened to him with real interest. The quiet strength she'd shown in facing the media circus. He thought back to their first coffee meeting, before the wedding. She'd been different from anyone he'd met in his corporate world, authentic, unpretentious, kind. Had that all been an act? No, he realized. The wealth and power might have been hidden, but Jenna's character had been real. Dawn found him standing at his window, watching the sun rise over the city. His assistant had sent more files, carefully compiled evidence of the Martin family's vast influence. They could indeed save his company with a single word. But Jenna's test wasn't about that. It was about something more fundamental. Could he set aside his pride and ambition long enough to see what was really important? He thought about the past few weeks with Jenna. Despite the artificial nature of their arrangement, there had been moments of genuine connection. The way she'd touched his arm reassuringly before his press conference. Her quiet laughter when he'd told her about his disaster of a first business venture. The concerned look in her eyes when he'd worked late 3 nights in a row. Noah reached for his phone and typed a reply to Jenna's message. "There's a quiet cafe near the park. 8 a.m.? Her response came quickly. "I'll be there." He set the phone down and walked to his closet to change. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. His reflection in the mirror looked tired but determined. The past 12 hours had shaken everything he thought he knew about his marriage, his company, his future. But one thing had become clear in the long night of reflection. His growing feelings for Jenna weren't about her family's power or influence. They were about her strength, her integrity, her genuine care for others. The test her family had devised might be manipulative, but it had revealed something true. He was falling for his wife, regardless of her background. Noah straightened his tie and grabbed his keys. The situation was complicated. The stakes were enormous, and trust was still a fragile thing between them. But for the first time since the scandal broke, he felt certain about something. He wanted this marriage to work, not for his company's sake, but for his own. Noah adjusted his bow tie as he waited in the lobby of their shared penthouse. 3 weeks had passed since their conversation at the cafe, where they'd agreed to give their arrangement a real chance. Tonight was another charity gala, their 4th public appearance this month. Jenna emerged from her room wearing a midnight blue gown that sparkled subtly under the lights. No flashy diamonds or statement pieces, just a simple pearl necklace that spoke of understated elegance. "Ready?" she asked, smoothing down her dress. "You look beautiful," Noah said, meaning it. He'd noticed lately how she never tried to outshine others, even though she could easily afford the most expensive designers. At the gala, Noah watched as Jenna worked the room. Unlike the socialites who fluttered from person to person, broadcasting their donations, she spent time with the charity workers, asking detailed questions about their programs. "Mrs. Bennett," called out Mrs. Harrison, one of the city's most notorious social climbers. "That dress is rather simple for such an occasion, don't you think?" Noah tensed, ready to intervene, but Jenna just smiled warmly. "The money saved on an expensive dress means more children get educated through this program. That feels like luxury to me." Her response left Mrs. Harrison speechless, and Noah felt a surge of admiration. He'd seen this side of Jenna more and more lately, her ability to deflect criticism with grace while standing firm in her values. The following weekend, they attended a local community center's opening. Instead of just cutting the ribbon, Jenna rolled up her sleeves and joined the volunteers serving meals. Noah found himself following her lead, his expensive suit forgotten as he handed out plates of food. "You've got some sauce on your tie," Jenna whispered, dabbing at it with a napkin. The simple gesture felt oddly intimate. Their public appearances began to feel less like obligations. They developed small rituals. Jenna would straighten his tie before events, he'd hold her hand during speeches, they'd share knowing looks when dealing with particularly difficult socialites. One evening, after a particularly exhausting charity auction, they decided to skip the after-party. Instead, they got hot dogs from a street vendor and walked through the park. Jenna still in her evening gown, Noah carrying his suit jacket over one shoulder. "My family's having a small gathering this weekend," Jenna said, wiping mustard from the corner of her mouth. "Would you like to come?" Noah hesitated. He hadn't spent much time with her family since discovering their true identity, but looking at Jenna's hopeful expression, he found himself nodding. The gathering turned out to be a casual backyard barbecue. Jenna's father, despite his enormous wealth and influence, was manning the grill in a kiss the cook apron. Her mother was setting out paper plates, and her younger siblings were playing with the family dog. "No business talk tonight," Jenna's father announced, handing Noah a beer. "Your family now." Throughout the evening, Noah watched Jenna laugh with her sisters, help her mother with the dishes, and tease her father about his overcooked burgers. She was completely at ease, completely herself. The same person she'd been before he knew about her family's wealth, genuine, kind, unpretentious. As the sun set, everyone gathered around the fire pit to roast marshmallows. Jenna sat close to Noah, showing him how to achieve the perfect golden brown toast. When she reached over to wipe a smudge of chocolate from his chin, their eyes met. In that moment, watching the firelight dance across her face, Noah felt something shift inside him. The realization hit him with startling clarity. He was falling in love with her. Not the wealthy heiress, not the perfect society wife, but just Jenna, the woman who cared more about helping others than wearing expensive dresses, who could handle criticism with grace, who taught him how to make the perfect s'more. The knowledge settled in his chest, warm and certain as the fire before them. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, fitting perfectly against his side. Noah's office felt smaller these days. The once pristine glass walls seemed to close in as he scrolled through another series of negative headlines. His company's stock had dropped another 5%, and the whispers of unethical practices wouldn't die down. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the intercom, "the board is requesting another emergency meeting for tomorrow morning." Noah pressed his fingers against his temples. "Schedule it." He glanced at his phone. 3 missed calls from investors, and a text from Jenna asking if he'd be home for dinner. The drive home was a blur of traffic and racing thoughts. He'd built this company from nothing, poured 15 years of his life into it. Now it was crumbling because of accusations he couldn't seem to shake, no matter what he did. When he walked through the door of their penthouse, Jenna was setting the table. She'd prepared his favorite pasta dish, the aroma filling the air. "I thought you could use some comfort food," she said, offering a gentle smile. "I know things have been difficult at work." Noah loosened his tie, dropping heavily into a chair. "Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. The board's breathing down my neck, investors are pulling out, and our PR team can't get ahead of the story." Jenna placed a glass of wine in front of him. "Maybe I could help. My family has connections in—" "Your family?" Noah cut her off, his voice sharp. "The same family that's been testing me, playing games with my life?" "That's not fair," Jenna said quietly. "They're trying to protect me, and they could actually help if you'd let them." Noah took a long drink of wine. "I didn't need help before all this, before you. My life was perfectly under control until—" "Until what?" Jenna's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she served the pasta. "Until you were caught in a scandal? Until you needed to marry someone to save your reputation?" The truth in her words stung, feeding his frustration. At least then it was straightforward. But now? He pushed his plate away. "Now I'm married to someone who's been lying to me from day one, whose family is apparently pulling strings behind the scenes, and I can't tell what's real anymore." "Everything I've shown you about who I am is real," Jenna said. "My family's wealth doesn't change that." "Doesn't it?" Noah stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Because from where I'm standing, this whole marriage feels like an elaborate test, and I'm tired of being the one who's always being tested, always being judged, while my company falls apart." His voice had risen to a shout, echoing in the elegant dining room. Jenna flinched slightly, but her expression remained composed. "Your company is falling apart because of choices you made," she said softly. "Not because of me, not because of my family. And if you're looking for someone to blame, I don't need lectures from someone who's never had to work for anything in her life." The words burst out of him, harsh and unfair. "You've been hiding behind your family's power this whole time, playing at being humble while watching me struggle. Well, congratulations. You've certainly complicated my life enough. Is that what your family wanted?" The silence that followed his outburst was deafening. Jenna stood perfectly still, her face pale but composed. Without a word, she placed her napkin on the table and walked toward the door. Her footsteps were quiet on the marble floor, her dignity intact despite his cruel words. Only when the door clicked shut behind her did Noah realize he was breathing heavily, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The pasta grew cold on the table, the wine untouched in her glass as he stood alone in the wreckage of his anger. The morning sun filtered through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Noah's head throbbed, a reminder of too much wine and too many regrets from the night before. He'd slept on the couch, unable to face their bedroom after his outburst. Making his way to the kitchen for coffee, he noticed an envelope propped against the coffee maker. His name was written in Jenna's elegant handwriting. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. "Dear Noah, I understand your frustration. The weight you're carrying, the company, the scandal, our marriage. It's overwhelming. I know you feel trapped, tested, and judged at every turn. But please understand that my feelings for you are real. Yes, my family has power. Yes, they wanted to ensure you were worthy. But I've never played games with your heart. Every moment we've shared, every laugh, every quiet evening, that was all real. The woman who makes you coffee in the morning, who listens to your stories, who believes in your strength, that's who I am. I'm asking for your patience. Trust that I'm on your side. Trust that this marriage can be more than a contract or a solution to your problems. I've seen the man behind the CEO, and that's the man I'm choosing to believe in. Take the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. Jenna." Noah read the letter 3 times, each word sinking deeper. He remembered their first real date after the wedding, how Jenna had insisted on going to a small Italian restaurant instead of the exclusive clubs he usually frequented. She'd told stories about her childhood, making him laugh until his sides hurt. There had been no pretense that night, no power plays or hidden agendas. He thought about how she'd handled the media attention, always graceful, never complaining, how she'd stood beside him at press conferences, her quiet strength more valuable than any PR strategy. His assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, I have the board meeting notes ready for your review." "Not now," Noah said, still holding the letter. "Cancel my morning appointments." "But sir, the investors—" "Can wait." His voice was firm. "Some things are more important." He spent the next hour writing and rewriting a text to Jenna. Everything seemed inadequate compared to her heartfelt letter. Finally, he sent, "Can we talk tonight? I'll cook dinner." Her response came quickly. "I'll be home at 7. The day crawled by. Noah left work early, stopping at the market to buy ingredients for the simple pasta dish Jenna had tried to make the night before. He wasn't much of a cook, but he remembered watching her prepare it. When Jenna walked in at 7, the apartment smelled of garlic and tomatoes, and soft music played in the background. She paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. "I probably overcooked the pasta," Noah said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "And I definitely spilled sauce everywhere, but I wanted to try." "It looks perfect," Jenna said softly. Noah stepped closer to her. "I'm sorry about last night. You were right, I was looking for someone to blame. The truth is, I'm scared. I've always been in control, always known what to do next. But now you have to trust someone else," Jenna finished. "I know that's not easy for you." "It's not," he admitted. "But your letter, it made me realize something. All these weeks I've been so focused on what I might lose, I almost missed what I was gaining." Jenna's eyes glistened. "And what's that?" "A partner. Someone who sees me as more than just a CEO or a scandal. Someone who believes in me enough to write letters instead of walking away when I'm being an idiot." A tear slipped down Jenna's cheek. Noah reached out and wiped it away with his thumb. "I want to do better," he said. "I want to be worthy of your trust, your patience. Will you help me?" Noah woke up feeling lighter than he had in weeks. Last night's conversation with Jenna had shifted something between them, creating a fragile bridge of trust. He found her in the kitchen, hair still damp from her morning shower, scrolling through her phone while sipping coffee. "Morning," he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. She smiled, tilting her face up to meet his. His assistant's rapid footsteps in the hallway shattered the peaceful moment. She burst through the door, her usually composed face tight with worry. "Noah, we have a situation." She thrust her tablet toward him. The headline made his stomach drop. Bennett Corp CEO under fire. Millions missing from company accounts. "What is this?" His voice came out hoarse. The article detailed allegations of systematic fund misappropriation spanning the last 3 years. According to anonymous sources, Noah had been channeling company money into personal offshore accounts. "It's everywhere," his assistant said, pulling up more news sites. "Bloomberg, Reuters, Wall Street Journal, they're all running with it." Noah's hands grew cold as he scrolled through the article. The accusations were specific, citing exact dates and amounts. Someone had done their homework, crafting a narrative that seemed believable even to him. "This is impossible," he muttered. "I've never touched those accounts. Every transaction has gone through proper channels, been approved by the board." Jenna set down her coffee cup, her movements deliberate and controlled. She hadn't said a word since the news broke. His phone started buzzing, board members, investors, lawyers, all demanding answers. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. Noah loosened his tie, trying to think clearly through the panic rising in his chest. "Get legal on this immediately," he told his assistant. "I want a full audit of every transaction mentioned in this article, and set up an emergency board meeting for this afternoon." "Already on it," she replied, fingers flying over her phone. "PR is drafting a statement, but they need your approval before—" "No statements," Noah cut in. "Not until we know exactly what we're dealing with." His assistant nodded and hurried out, leaving Noah alone with Jenna. The silence between them felt different now, heavy with unspoken questions. "Jenna," he started, but stopped when she raised her eyes to his. Her expression was carefully blank, giving nothing away. "You don't believe this, do you?" he asked, hating the note of desperation in his voice. She stood slowly, gathering her things. "I should get to work," she said, her voice neutral. "You have a lot to deal with today." "That's not an answer." "No," she agreed quietly. "It's not." The memory of last night's breakthrough felt like a cruel joke now. They'd made progress, taken steps toward real trust. And now this. The timing couldn't be worse. His phone buzzed again, the board chairman demanding an immediate conference call. Noah watched Jenna slip on her coat, her movements precise and measured. She paused at the door, still not meeting his eyes. "I'll be late tonight," she said. "Don't wait up." The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Noah standing in their kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of their peaceful morning. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink where they'd left them, planning to deal with them later. His phone kept buzzing, each notification another person demanding explanations he couldn't give. The article's accusations swam before his eyes. Dates, amounts, account numbers. Someone had gone to great lengths to make this look real. Noah sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. The weight of it all pressed down on him. The company he'd built from nothing, his reputation, the fragile trust he'd just begun to build with Jenna. All of it balanced on a knife's edge, threatening to collapse. And Jenna's silence. That was the worst part. After everything they'd shared last night, her retreat behind that careful mask felt like a physical blow. He couldn't read her, couldn't tell if she believed the accusations or not. Her face had been completely unreadable, giving him nothing to hold on to. Noah's office felt like a fortress under siege. Every news alert, every phone call brought fresh accusations. The latest headline flashed across his screen. "Bennett Corp, a house of cards built on lies?" He rubbed his temples, trying to focus through his mounting headache. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Jenna saying she'd be working late. Third night this week. The distance between them grew with each passing day. "Sir?" His assistant appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "There's more." "Of course there is," he muttered. The new allegations were worse. Detailed accounts of supposed backroom deals, questionable contracts, and corporate espionage. The level of detail was unsettling. These weren't just random accusations. Someone knew the inner workings of his company. "The board wants another meeting tomorrow," his assistant said, her voice carefully neutral. "They're concerned about the specificity of these claims." Noah studied her face. She'd been with him for 5 years, handled countless crises, but something felt off. Her usual fierce protectiveness of him and the company seemed muted. "How many people had access to the information in these articles?" he asked. "I can compile a list," she offered quickly. Too quickly. "No need." He stood, walking to the window. "I already know it's a very small circle. Board members, senior executives, and—" He turned to face her. "My personal assistant." She didn't flinch, didn't protest, just stood there, perfectly still, her face a mask of professional concern. "The timing of these leaks is interesting," he continued. "Always just when things start to improve, just when the previous crisis begins to fade." He stepped closer. "Almost like someone's orchestrating it. That's quite an accusation, Mr. Bennett." Her voice was cool, composed. "Is it? You're the one who handles my schedule, my communications, my private files?" The words felt bitter in his mouth. "You've been pushing for a promotion for months. What better way to create an opening than to tear down the current leadership?" "If you're asking if I'm behind the leaks, the answer is no." She met his gaze steadily. "But you're right about one thing. Someone is orchestrating this. Maybe you should ask your wife about that." The suggestion hit him like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "I'm just saying, the problem started after she came into the picture." His assistant shrugged. "And her family, well, they have a history of hostile takeovers." Noah's hands clenched into fists. "Get out." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I've always been loyal to you, Mr. Bennett. Maybe it's time to question where others' loyalties lie." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Noah alone with his thoughts. His office, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a trap. The city lights twinkled beyond his window, mocking him with their steadiness, while his world spun out of control. His phone lit up with Jenna's face. Another message. "Don't wait up. Important meeting." The words blurred before his eyes. Trust, he realized, was like a mirror. Once cracked, everything you saw in it became distorted. His assistant's words echoed in his mind, planting seeds of doubt he couldn't shake. He sank into his chair, surrounded by the empire he'd built, watching it crumble piece by piece. The company was slipping away. His reputation was in tatters. And Jenna was becoming a stranger, retreating behind walls he couldn't breach. The silence in his office grew heavier, filled with questions he couldn't answer and suspicions he couldn't dismiss. For the first time since the crisis began, Noah felt truly alone. His assistant's words had done their work, leaving him to wonder, who could he really trust? The woman who'd stood by his side professionally for years, or the wife who'd entered his life in the midst of chaos? The uncertainty ate at him, poisoning everything it touched. Noah stared at his phone, at Jenna's message, feeling the distance between them stretch into an abyss. He was losing everything, piece by piece, and he didn't know how to stop it. Noah paced the length of their penthouse living room, his footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The city lights sparkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, but their usual comfort was absent tonight. His phone sat silent on the coffee table, no messages from Jenna for hours. The grandfather clock in the corner struck midnight. Still no sign of her. He loosened his tie, trying to shake off the suffocating feeling that had settled over him since his conversation with his assistant. Their wedding photos lined the hallway. Noah paused before one, studying Jenna's face. Even then, there had been something in her eyes, a knowledge, a secret perhaps, that he couldn't quite read. The same look she'd given him when the latest rumors broke. The sound of keys in the door made him turn. Jenna entered, her designer heels clicking against the floor. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect posture slightly slumped. "You're still up," she said, surprise coloring her voice. She set her purse down, avoiding his gaze. "Another late meeting?" Noah asked, watching her carefully. "Yes, the Foundation's annual gala needs attention." She moved towards the kitchen, but Noah caught the slight hesitation in her step. "Funny thing about these new rumors," he said, following her. "They contain information only a handful of people would know." Jenna pulled a water bottle from the fridge. "Noah, it's late. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" "You've been saying that for days." He leaned against the counter, blocking her exit. "Every time I bring up the rumors, you change the subject or find a reason to leave." She took a long drink, her fingers tightening around the bottle. "Because I'm tired of them, aren't you? What I'm tired of is feeling like my wife is keeping secrets from me." The words came out sharper than he intended. "You're never home anymore. When you are, you're distant. And these rumors, they keep getting more detailed, more damaging." "What exactly are you implying?" Her voice turned cold. "I don't know, Jenna. You tell me." He stepped closer. "Your family has the connections to destroy my company. You've admitted they wanted to test me. What better way than to orchestrate my downfall?" Jenna's face paled. "You think I'm behind this? That my family is?" "Are you saying you're not?" She set the water bottle down with controlled precision. "I'm saying you should trust your wife." "Trust works both ways," Noah countered. "You've been hiding things since the day we met. Your family, your true identity. What else aren't you telling me?" "I explained why I kept those things from you." Her eyes flashed. "I needed to know you weren't just after my family's influence. And now, what's your excuse now?" The frustration of weeks poured out. "Every time things start to improve, another leak appears. Every time I think we're getting closer, you pull away. What am I supposed to think?" Jenna's silence spoke volumes. She stood there, her face a careful mask, neither confirming nor denying his accusations. "Just tell me the truth," Noah pleaded, his anger giving way to exhaustion. "Are you involved in these rumors?" She picked up her purse. "I'm going to bed. We can discuss this when you're thinking more clearly." "Jenna, good night, Noah." He watched her retreat down the hallway, her shoulders straight, her steps measured. The sound of their bedroom door closing echoed through the apartment like a final statement. Noah sank onto the couch, his mind racing. Every instinct told him Jenna was hiding something. The question was what? And why? The woman he'd fallen in love with, the one who'd shown him the value of humility and kindness, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone he barely recognized. The night stretched endlessly before him, filled with unanswered questions and growing doubts. Sleep would not come easily, if at all. Tomorrow, he promised himself, he would get answers. One way or another, this silence between them had to end. Noah's office was eerily quiet as he stared at the email on his screen. His hands trembled slightly as he scrolled through the metadata his IT team had uncovered. The source of the leaks traced back to an encrypted email address, but the IP address belonged to his penthouse's network. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, forgotten as he'd pored over the evidence. The sky outside his window had transformed from bright morning to dusky evening, matching his darkening mood. Each piece of information felt like another blow to his chest. The security footage his team recovered showed Jenna meeting with journalists at obscure cafes across the city. The timestamps matched perfectly with the release of each damaging article. The weight of betrayal settled heavy in his stomach as he watched her pass manila envelopes across tables, her face composed and professional. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Bennett, your car is ready." Noah nodded, gathering the printed evidence into a folder. The drive home was a blur of city lights and racing thoughts. How could he have been so blind? The woman he'd grown to love, who'd challenged his views on success and happiness, had been systematically trying to destroy him. The penthouse was warm and bright when he arrived. Jenna sat at their dining table, working on her laptop. She looked up with a smile that faltered when she saw his expression. "Noah, what's wrong?" He dropped the folder on the table between them. Photos spilled out. Jenna with various reporters, timestamps clearly visible. Her face drained of color. "Care to explain these?" His voice was deadly quiet. Jenna closed her laptop slowly, her movements deliberate. "I suppose there's no point in denying it now." "You're damn right there isn't." Noah's control slipped. "How could you do this? I trusted you. I fell in love with you." "I had to know," Jenna said, her voice steady despite her pale complexion. "I had to be sure about who you really were." Noah laughed bitterly. "By trying to destroy everything I've built? By making me look like a criminal? By seeing how you'd handle losing everything?" Jenna stood, matching his intensity. "My family has seen too many people destroyed by power and wealth. I needed to know if you were different." "So this was all a test?" Noah's voice rose. "Our entire marriage? Every moment we shared?" "The marriage was real," Jenna insisted, taking a step toward him. "My feelings for you are real. But yes, the leaks were orchestrated. I needed to see if you'd choose integrity over power when pushed to the edge." The beautiful memories of their time together shattered like glass in Noah's mind. Every intimate conversation, every shared laugh, had they all been part of her evaluation? "You had no right," he growled. "You could have asked me. We could have talked about your concerns. Instead, you chose to manipulate me, to play games with my life." "Would you have been honest?" Jenna challenged. "Would you have shown your true character if you knew you were being tested?" Noah paced the room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The people whose jobs were at risk? The investors who lost money? Did you even think about the consequences?" "Of course I did," Jenna replied. "Every leak was carefully calculated. Nothing that would cause permanent damage. Just enough pressure to force you to make choices." "Choices?" Noah spun to face her. "You mean like choosing between saving my company or staying true to my principles? Between protecting my employees or protecting my reputation?" "Yes, exactly those choices." Jenna's voice softened. "And you chose correctly, Noah. Every time. You chose integrity over profit. You protected your employees, even at personal cost. You refused to compromise your values, even when it would have been easier." Noah stared at her, incredulous. "And that justifies what you did? Playing God with my life?" "I had to be sure," she repeated. "My family's influence could have saved your company at any time, but I needed to know you deserved that help." The magnitude of her manipulation stunned him into silence. All this time, she'd been pulling strings, watching him dance to her tune while pretending to be his supportive wife. "I don't even know who you are anymore," he said finally, his voice hollow. Noah's footsteps echoed through the empty hallways of his corporate office. At midnight, the building stood silent, yet he couldn't bring himself to go home. Home meant facing Jenna, and right now, that thought made his chest ache with a pain he couldn't quite describe. He unlocked his office door, not bothering with the lights. The city's glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows provided enough illumination. Loosening his tie, he collapsed into his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. The familiar smell of mahogany and paper that usually brought him comfort now felt suffocating. His assistant had left a stack of newspapers on his desk. Each headline screamed accusations, their words burning into his mind. Bennett empire crumbling, CEO under fire, ethics scandal rocks industry leader. He swept them onto the floor with one angry motion. "Everything I built," he whispered to the empty room. "Everything I worked for." The photo frame on his desk caught his eye, a candid shot from a charity gala last month. Jenna was laughing at something he'd said, her head thrown back, eyes sparkling. He'd fallen in love with that laugh, with her seemingly genuine joy in life's simple pleasures. Now he wondered if even that had been part of her calculated performance. His phone buzzed. Another message from Jenna. "Please come home. We need to talk." He ignored it, just like the previous 5. Instead, he pulled up the company's latest financial reports. The numbers were grim. Share prices had plummeted, investors were pulling out, and long-term contracts were being reconsidered. Years of hard work, countless sacrifices, all threatening to crumble because of a test. "Mr. Bennett?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mrs. Bennett is here to see you." Noah's jaw clenched. "I'm busy." "She says she won't leave until you speak with her." Of course she wouldn't. Stubbornness was apparently one genuine trait she possessed. "Fine. Send her in." Jenna entered quietly, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She'd changed into more casual clothes, jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Noah kept his eyes fixed on his computer screen. "You're not answering my calls?" she said softly. "I'm trying to save what's left of my company." His voice was cold, detached. "You know, the one you've been systematically destroying." Jenna moved closer, stopping at the edge of his desk. "I never meant to destroy anything, Noah. I told you, this was about proving who you really are." "And who am I, Jenna?" He finally looked at her. The fool who fell in love with a woman who was playing him? The CEO who couldn't protect his company from his own wife? "You're the man who chose integrity over profit," she insisted, "who protected his employees even when it cost him personally, who refused to compromise his values even when it would have been easier." "Stop." Noah stood abruptly. "Stop trying to justify what you did. You had no right to put me through this, to put my employees through this. Do you know how many people depend on this company for their livelihoods?" Tears welled in Jenna's eyes. "I'm sorry. I truly am. I got caught up in my family's way of doing things, testing, proving, verifying. But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you too. That wasn't part of the plan." "How convenient," Noah said bitterly. "Now that you've proven my worth, your powerful family can swoop in and save the day. Is that how this story ends?" "No," Jenna whispered. "This ends however you want it to end. I'm here to ask for your forgiveness, Noah. Not to offer solutions or make excuses, just to say I'm sorry, and I was wrong." Noah turned to the window, watching the city lights blur through unshed tears. The woman he loved stood behind him, offering an apology that felt simultaneously insufficient and heart-wrenching. His company was in ruins, his reputation tarnished, and his trust shattered. Yet something in her voice, in her presence, still pulled at him, even as his mind screamed to push her away. He remained silent, staring out at the city, his shoulders rigid with tension. The distance between them felt like miles, though only a few feet separated them physically. Jenna took a shaky breath, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. The city lights behind Noah cast his face in shadow, making it impossible to read his expression. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. I was terrified, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Every man who's ever shown interest in me, they all wanted something. Access to my family's connections, their influence, their money. Noah remained silent, but his shoulders tensed slightly. She pressed on, needing him to understand. When the board suggested our marriage, I thought it would be the same story all over again. Another ambitious man looking to climb higher. She moved closer, close enough to catch the subtle scent of his cologne. My family. They've always tested potential partners. It's how we protect ourselves. I thought I was being smart, following their example. By destroying everything I've built? Noah's voice was rough with emotion. No. Tears spilled down Jenna's cheeks. I never meant for it to go this far. The initial rumors were supposed to be small, containable, just enough pressure to see how you'd react. Would you throw me aside when things got difficult? Would you try to use my family's influence to make it all go away? She watched as Noah's hands gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles white with tension. Instead, you proved to be different. You protected your employees, refused to compromise your ethics. Her voice cracked. You chose to love me, even when you thought I had nothing to offer but complications. Noah finally turned to face her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I fell in love with you, Jenna. The real you, the woman who brings coffee to my security team on cold mornings, who remembers my assistant's birthday, who lights up when talking about her volunteer work. Was any of that real? All of it, she whispered fiercely. That's who I am. The tests, the secrets. That's my family's influence. But everything between us, every moment we've shared, that was real. She reached for his hand, relief flooding through her when he didn't pull away. I was so focused on protecting myself from being used that I didn't realize I was the one causing damage. The more I fell in love with you, the more terrified I became. What if I was wrong about you? What if this was all an act? Noah's fingers tightened around hers. So you pushed harder, leaked more rumors. Yes, she admitted, shame coloring her voice. Each time you chose integrity over easy solutions, I fell harder. But I couldn't stop the momentum. The media took the stories and ran with them, spinning them into something much bigger than I intended. My employees are scared, Jenna. Their jobs, their futures, everything's uncertain now. I know. She stepped closer, placing her free hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat under her palm. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. My family's ready to help, not because you've proven yourself to them, but because I asked them to. Because I love you. And I was wrong. Noah closed his eyes, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. When he opened them again, something had shifted in his expression. I understand fear, Jenna. I understand wanting to protect yourself. He cupped her face, thumbing away her tears. But this can't happen again, ever. It won't, she promised. No more tests, no more secrets, just us, being honest with each other. If we move forward, Noah said carefully, it has to be built on trust. Complete trust. I need to know that you're with me, not against me, that we're partners in everything. Jenna nodded emphatically. Yes, partners. No more family games, no more tests. Just us, facing everything together. I'm still angry, he warned. This won't be fixed overnight. I know, she whispered, but I'm not going anywhere. However long it takes, whatever I need to do to rebuild your trust, I'm here. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of Dr. Peterson's office as Noah and Jenna sat on opposite ends of the plush leather couch. It was their third therapy session this week, part of their commitment to rebuilding what had been broken. Let's talk about trust, Dr. Peterson said, her gentle voice breaking the silence. Noah, you mentioned feeling betrayed. Can you elaborate on that? Noah shifted in his seat, his fingers absently playing with his wedding ring. "It's not just about the rumors," he began, glancing at Jenna. "It's about feeling like I was being tested constantly, without knowing it. Every decision I made, every reaction I had, it was all being scrutinized." Jenna's hands twisted in her lap, but she remained quiet, giving him space to speak. They'd learned that interrupting only led to more misunderstandings. "The thing is," Noah continued, his voice softening, "I understand why you did it. Your family's wealth, your past experiences, they made you cautious. But we could have talked about it. You could have trusted me enough to be honest about your fears." "Doctor?" Peterson nodded encouragingly. "Jenna, how does hearing this make you feel?" "Ashamed," Jenna admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "Noah's right. I was so focused on protecting myself that I forgot to give him a chance to prove himself naturally." She turned to face him fully. "You've been amazing through all of this. The press conferences, the damage control meetings, you've handled everything with such grace." Indeed, they'd spent the past 2 weeks working tirelessly to salvage the company's reputation. Jenna had arranged meetings with key investors, using her family's connections not to strong-arm anyone, but to create opportunities for Noah to present his side of the story. He'd been transparent about the false rumors, taking responsibility for any genuine mistakes while firmly addressing the fabricated accusations. "I see both of you making efforts, Doctor," Peterson observed. "Noah, you're here in therapy despite your busy schedule. Jenna, you're actively working to make amends. These are positive steps." Noah reached across the couch, taking Jenna's hand. It was a small gesture, but one that made her eyes well with tears. "When I'm in those meetings," he said, "defending my company, my employees, I feel stronger knowing you're on my side now, really on my side." "I am," Jenna whispered. "Completely." After the session, they walked through the quiet park across from the therapist's office. It had become their ritual, these peaceful moments away from the chaos of press and business obligations. "The board meeting went well yesterday," Jenna mentioned, her shoulder brushing against his as they walked. "Your presentation about the new ethical guidelines impressed everyone." Noah smiled, remembering the supportive nods from his board members. "Your suggestion about implementing a transparency committee was brilliant. It shows we're serious about preventing any real ethical issues in the future." They stopped at their favorite bench, overlooking a small pond where ducks paddled lazily across the water. The simple scene felt like a metaphor for their relationship, finding calm after the storm. "I got another call from the Times," Noah said, watching a mother duck guide her ducklings toward the shore. "They want to do a follow-up story about how we're moving forward, both personally and professionally." Jenna tensed slightly beside him, but then deliberately relaxed. "What do you think we should do?" "I think," he said slowly, "we should be honest. About making mistakes, about learning from them, about choosing to grow together instead of letting it tear us apart." She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. The gesture felt natural now, comfortable in a way it hadn't been before. "I'd like that," she said softly. "No more hiding." They sat there in companionable silence, watching the ducks, feeling the warm sun on their faces. Noah realized that for the first time since the scandal broke, his chest wasn't tight with anxiety. The company was stabilizing, their marriage was healing, and most importantly, they were facing everything together. "I love you," Jenna murmured, and Noah knew she meant it, not as part of any test or game, but as a simple, honest truth. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. In that moment, surrounded by the peace of the park and the warmth of his wife beside him, Noah felt truly at peace. Noah stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city lights flicker in the gathering dusk. The board meeting tomorrow would determine everything, his company's future, his legacy, and possibly his marriage. His assistant's heels clicked against the marble floor as she approached. "Mr. Bennett, I have the final numbers for tomorrow's presentation." She placed a thick folder on his desk. "The projections look promising if we proceed with the merger." Noah turned from the window, his reflection fading as he faced her. "And the conditions?" "Unchanged." She adjusted her glasses. "The Zhang Corporation insists on complete restructuring. New management, new board." She hesitated. "And they specifically mentioned that family entanglements could complicate matters." The implication was clear. Jenna's family's influence, while powerful, was seen as a liability by potential partners. The Zhangs wanted a clean slate, free from any competing interests. Noah's phone buzzed, a message from Jenna. "Dinner at home tonight? We need to talk." His stomach tightened. After weeks of therapy and rebuilding trust, they'd finally found their rhythm. But this merger could destroy everything they'd worked for. "Sir?" His assistant's voice pulled him back. "Should I confirm the preliminary agreement with the Zhangs?" "Give me until tomorrow morning," Noah said, gathering his coat. The weight of it felt like armor as he slipped it on. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. The company he'd built from nothing, the thousands of employees who depended on him, the legacy he'd dreamed of leaving, all of it hung in the balance. When he entered their apartment, the scent of home-cooked pasta filled the air. Jenna stood at the kitchen island, still in her work clothes, but with an apron tied around her waist. The sight made his heart ache. "You're early," she said, offering a small smile. "I thought I'd have time to change." The merger papers came in. Noah loosened his tie. The Zhangs made their final offer. Jenna's hands stilled over the cutting board. "And?" "They want a complete overhaul. New management, new direction." He met her eyes. "No family connections that could influence business decisions." The knife clicked against the wooden board as she set it down. "They want you to choose between the company and me." "Jenna, no, let me finish." She wiped her hands on her apron and came around the island. "I've watched you these past months, Noah. I've seen how this pressure has been eating at you. The constant meetings, the late nights, the stress of trying to please everyone." "It's my responsibility," he started, but she shook her head. "Is it? Or is it what you think you should want?" She took his hands in hers. "My family's connections could help stabilize the company, yes. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I love you, and I want a life with you, not with CEO Noah Bennett, but with the man who sits in the park with me and feeds the ducks." Noah's throat tightened. "The company employs thousands of people. Their livelihoods will be secure under the Zhang merger," Jenna finished. "You know they're good operators. They'll treat your people well." She squeezed his hands. "But you have to decide what you want. The empire you built, or a chance at something different, something real." The pasta sauce bubbled on the stove, filling the silence between them. Noah could smell the basil and garlic, could feel the warmth of Jenna's hands in his. All the trappings of a simple, beautiful life. "We could start fresh," Jenna continued softly. "Build something new together. No more scandals, no more tests, no more proving ourselves to the world. Just us, finding our way." Noah looked around their home, not the sleek, impersonal penthouse he'd lived in before, but this warm space they'd created together. Photos of them lined the walls, throw pillows Jenna had chosen brightened the couch, and her gardening magazine sat next to his business journals on the coffee table. "The board meeting is tomorrow morning," he said. "I have to give them my decision." Jenna released his hands and stepped back. "Then you have until tomorrow to decide what matters most. Your empire." She gestured to the window, where his office building stood illuminated against the night sky. Or this, us, a different kind of life. Noah stood at the window of their apartment long after Jenna had gone to bed. The city lights twinkled below, a constellation of artificial stars that had once represented everything he'd worked for. His company's building stood tallest among them, its illuminated logo a beacon he'd always followed. Now, it felt more like a warning light. He loosened his tie further, letting it hang limply around his neck. The pasta Jenna had made sat untouched on the counter, gone cold hours ago. His stomach growled, but he couldn't bring himself to eat. "What matters most?" he whispered to his reflection. The man staring back at him looked tired, worn down by months of scandal and stress. Not the confident CEO who had graced magazine covers, but someone more real. Someone Jenna had helped him become. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through recent photos. There they were at the park last weekend, Jenna laughing as she tossed bread to the ducks. Another showed them at a small cafe they'd discovered, where no one knew him as Noah Bennett, CEO. Just Noah, the man who held doors open for his wife and knew exactly how she liked her coffee. The sound of running water caught his attention. Jenna was still awake, probably getting ready for bed. He could picture her routine, removing her makeup, brushing her teeth, applying the lavender lotion she loved. Simple, ordinary moments that had become precious to him. Walking to his home office, Noah pulled up the merger documents on his laptop. The terms were clear and fair. The Jang Corporation would preserve jobs, maintain market stability, and even keep some of his innovative projects running. On paper, it was the perfect solution to save everything he'd built. Everything except his marriage. He thought back to the day he'd first met Jenna, how he'd dismissed her as simple, underestimated her worth. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd agreed to marry her to save his company, only to discover that she was the one thing that could truly save him. Midnight came and went. Noah paced the length of their living room, his sock-covered feet silent on the hardwood floors. The city continued its endless hum below, indifferent to his turmoil. A memory surfaced. His father, working endless hours at his small accounting firm, missing birthdays and baseball games. "Success requires sacrifice," he'd always said. Noah had built his empire on that principle, sacrificing relationships, health, and happiness for the next big deal. But what had it gotten him? A scandal-plagued company, sleepless nights, and a heart that only started beating properly when Jenna walked into the room. At 2 a.m, he found himself in their bedroom doorway. Jenna lay curled on her side, her dark hair spread across the pillow. The moonlight painted silver streaks across their bed, and Noah remembered all the nights he'd come home late to find her waiting, patient and understanding. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake her. His hand found hers, and even in sleep, her fingers curled around his. The simple gesture brought tears to his eyes. The empire he'd built was impressive, yes, but it was cold, built on spreadsheets and profit margins. What Jenna offered was different, a chance to build something warm and real, something that wouldn't vanish with the next market downturn or media scandal. Noah thought about their future, not the corporate mergers and board meetings, but the quiet moments. Sunday brunches and holiday celebrations, maybe children someday, running through a house filled with laughter instead of business calls. A life where success wasn't measured in dollar signs, but in shared smiles and simple joys. His grip on Jenna's hand tightened slightly. The choice that had seemed so impossible hours ago now felt crystal clear. His company wasn't worth losing her. The Jang Corporation would take good care of his legacy. But Jenna was irreplaceable. "I choose you," he whispered into the darkness, and for the first time in months, His heart felt light. Tomorrow he would face the board and sign away his empire. But here, in this moment, watching his wife sleep peacefully beside him, Noah knew he was making the right choice. The press conference room buzzed with anticipation. Cameras flashed like lightning strikes as Noah Bennett adjusted his tie one last time. Behind the heavy curtains, away from prying eyes, he felt Jenna's warm hand slip into his. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered, her eyes searching his face. Noah squeezed her hand. "For the first time in my life, I'm absolutely certain." His assistant hurried over, clipboard clutched to her chest. "Mr. Bennett, they're ready for you. The major networks are all here." Noah nodded, then turned to Jenna. She straightened his already perfect tie, a gesture that made his heart swell. "Together?" he asked. "Together," she confirmed. They walked onto the stage, hand in hand, facing the sea of reporters and flashing cameras. The room fell silent as Noah approached the podium, Jenna standing proudly at his side. The familiar weight of dozens of eyes on him felt different now. He was no longer trying to prove anything. "Good morning," Noah began, his voice steady and clear. "I've called this press conference to announce my resignation as CEO of Bennett Enterprises, effective immediately." The room erupted in shocked murmurs and camera clicks. Reporters jumped to their feet, shouting questions. Noah raised his hand for silence. "For years, I believed success meant bigger profits, larger markets, and more power. I built my life around that belief, sacrificing everything else in pursuit of corporate excellence." He paused, glancing at Jenna. "But recent events have taught me that true success isn't measured in quarterly reports or stock prices." A reporter from the Wall Street Journal stood up. "Mr. Bennett, is this decision related to the recent scandals?" "No," Noah replied firmly. "This decision comes from finally understanding what matters most. When I married Jenna, it was initially arranged to save my company's reputation. But she showed me a different kind of life, one filled with genuine connections, simple joys, and real love." The room grew quiet, hanging on his every word. Noah continued, "The Jang Corporation will acquire majority control of Bennett Enterprises, ensuring all employees retain their positions and our projects continue under capable leadership. But I'm choosing to step away completely." "What are your plans now?" someone called out. Noah smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "To live, to love, to remember that life isn't about the next big deal or the corner office. It's about the people we share it with." Jenna stepped closer, and Noah wrapped an arm around her waist. "My wife taught me that success without happiness is no success at all. I'm not walking away from failure. I'm walking toward something better." The questions came rapid fire. "What about the shareholders? Will you maintain any role in the company? Is this related to Ms. Martin's family connections?" Noah addressed each question calmly, but his eyes kept returning to Jenna. She stood beside him, radiating strength and support. The woman everyone had once mocked was now his anchor, his compass pointing true north. "The arrangements with Jang Corporation are fair and beneficial to all parties," he explained. "But more importantly, they allow me to choose what really matters. I choose love over power. I choose connection over control. I choose Jenna." The press room erupted again, but this time the tone was different. There was a ripple of appreciation, even admiration, in the crowd. Several reporters were smiling, and Noah caught sight of a few people wiping their eyes. As they left the podium, the questions continued, but they felt distant now, like waves breaking on a far-off shore. Noah felt the heavy mantle of CEO slip from his shoulders, replaced by something lighter yet infinitely more precious: freedom. In the privacy of their waiting car, Jenna turned to him, her eyes shining. "You did it." We did it, Noah corrected, finally feeling at peace with his decision. The weight of expectations, of corporate responsibility, of maintaining an image, it all melted away in the warmth of Jenna's smile. Outside, reporters clamored for more statements, their cameras still flashing. But inside the car, Noah had everything he needed. The choice that had seemed impossible just days ago now felt like the most natural thing in the world. Noah sat in the elegant parlor of the Martin family estate, his fingers drumming nervously on the armrest of an antique chair. The room spoke of old money and quiet power. Persian rugs, oil paintings in gilded frames, and furniture that had likely witnessed centuries of history. Jenna squeezed his hand reassuringly. They're ready to see us now. As they walked through massive double doors into what appeared to be a private study, Noah's breath caught. The people gathered there weren't just wealthy. They radiated influence. He recognized several faces from international news coverage, a Supreme Court justice, 2 senators, and what appeared to be foreign diplomats. A distinguished man with silver hair rose from behind an imposing mahogany desk. Noah Bennett, he said warmly, extending his hand. I'm James Martin, Jenna's father. We've been watching you very carefully these past months. Noah shook his hand firmly, though his heart raced. Sir, Please, James interrupted. Let me speak first. He gestured to the others in the room. We are Jenna's family, not just by blood, but by centuries of shared purpose and responsibility. Our influence extends far beyond what the public knows. An elegant woman, who Noah recognized as the Supreme Court Justice, stepped forward. When Jenna told us about you, we were skeptical. Another CEO, we thought, seeking advantage through marriage. But you proved us wrong, added one of the senators, his eyes twinkling. Spectacularly wrong. James nodded approvingly. You chose love over power, integrity over profit. You walked away from everything you built, not knowing if there would be anything left to catch you. That's the kind of man we respect, said another family member. That's the kind of man we welcome. Jenna beamed beside him, and Noah felt overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment. These people, who could probably reshape global politics with a few phone calls, were offering him their approval. We saw how you handled the pressure, James continued. How you treated Jenna when you thought she came from nothing. How you responded when you discovered her true background. And most importantly, how you chose to resolve the crisis at your company. Your press conference this morning was quite moving, the justice added. Genuine, heartfelt. It's rare to see such honesty in public life these days. Noah looked at Jenna, then back at her family. I just did what felt right, he said simply. Jenna showed me what really matters in life. I couldn't ignore that truth once I saw it. James smiled broadly. And that, young man, is exactly why we're having this conversation. Our family's power comes with great responsibility. We need people who understand the difference between what they can do and what they should do. We protect what matters, another family member explained. Sometimes from the shadows, sometimes in plain sight, but always with purpose, always with integrity. Jenna stepped forward. Dad, everyone, thank you. Noah is everything I told you he was, everything I hoped he would be. James walked around his desk and placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. Son, you've earned not just our approval but our respect. Welcome to the family, the real family. The atmosphere in the room shifted from formal to warm as family members came forward to greet Noah personally. Each had a story, a connection, a piece of the vast network that made up Jenna's world. They shared anecdotes about Jenna's childhood, about family traditions, about the real work they did behind the scenes to make the world a better place. As Noah listened and laughed with them, he felt something he hadn't experienced since losing his own parents: belonging. This wasn't about power or influence anymore. This was about finding his place in a family that valued the same things he'd finally learned to cherish: love, integrity, and purpose. Looking at Jenna's radiant smile, seeing the pride in her eyes as she watched him connect with her family, Noah knew he'd made the right choice. He'd walked away from his empire, but he'd gained something far more valuable: a true home. The moving truck pulled away, leaving Noah and Jenna standing in front of their new home. It wasn't the penthouse apartment or sprawling mansion everyone expected. Instead, they'd chosen a charming two-story house in a quiet neighborhood, with a small garden and a wraparound porch. "It's perfect," Jenna said, slipping her hand into his. Noah looked at their new home, really looked at it. The paint was a bit worn in places, and the garden needed work. But there was something genuine about it, something real. "It feels right," he agreed. They carried boxes inside together, laughing as they bumped into each other in the narrow hallway. No staff, no assistants, just them, figuring things out together. The hardwood floors creaked beneath their feet, telling stories of families who'd lived here before. "I think this goes in the kitchen," Noah said, hefting a box labeled dishes in Jenna's neat handwriting. "Since when do you know where things go?" she teased, following him with a box of her own. "I'm learning," he replied with a grin. "Did you know people actually cook in kitchens? I always thought they were just for show." Jenna laughed, the sound echoing through their empty house. "Well, Mr. Bennett, prepare to be amazed. I'm going to teach you how to make pasta from scratch." They spent the afternoon unpacking, turning the empty house into their home. Noah hung pictures while Jenna arranged books on shelves. They debated about where the couch should go and compromised on the placement of their bed. As evening approached, they sat on the floor of their living room, surrounded by half-empty boxes and bubble wrap. They'd ordered pizza, their first meal in their new home, and were eating it straight from the box. "Remember our first dinner together?" Noah asked, reaching for another slice. "That fancy restaurant where I barely touched my food because I was so nervous about the arrangement?" Jenna nodded, leaning against him. "You were trying so hard to be professional about everything. I could see right through you, you know." "Could you now?" He raised an eyebrow. You were terrified. Not of me, but of losing control, of letting anyone see the real you." She touched his cheek gently. "I like this version better." Noah looked around their modest living room. The furniture was a mix of old and new, nothing matching perfectly but somehow fitting together. "Kind of like them," he thought. "We should paint this room," he said suddenly. "Maybe that soft blue you like?" Jenna's eyes lit up. "Really? You want to paint it yourself?" "Why not? I mean, how hard can it be?" She laughed. "Oh, you're going to regret saying that, but yes, let's paint it together." They spent the evening planning their home improvements, drawing rough sketches on the back of the pizza box. Jenna wanted to plant flowers in the garden. Noah thought about building a workspace where he could pursue his new passion for writing. They dreamed together, their voices mixing with the crickets chirping outside their windows. As night fell, they made their way upstairs to their bedroom. The mattress was on the floor. They hadn't assembled the bed frame yet, but neither of them minded. They curled up together under fresh sheets, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and settling sounds of their new house. "No regrets?" Jenna whispered in the darkness. Noah pulled her closer. "Not a single one." He drifted off to sleep, comfortable in their imperfect, wonderful new home. When morning came, Noah woke slowly, feeling the warmth of sunlight on his face. Jenna was still asleep beside him, her hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful. In that moment, watching her sleep in their modest bedroom with its bare walls and boxes still waiting to be unpacked, Noah felt something he'd been searching for his entire life. He felt at home. Noah stood at the kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in soft pinks and oranges. Steam rose from his coffee mug. Plain ceramic, not the designer brand he used to favor. The morning air carried the scent of fresh grass and blooming flowers from their small garden. His phone buzzed. Another news article about his departure from corporate life. These days, he barely glanced at them. The headlines that once consumed his every waking moment now felt like stories about someone else entirely. "You're up early," Jenna said, padding into the kitchen in her slippers. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "Just thinking," he replied, covering her hands with his. "Dangerous habit," she teased, reaching for her own coffee mug, a chipped one she refused to throw away because it was from their first morning in the house. Noah turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Remember when all this started? The scandal, the arranged marriage? You mean when you thought marrying me was the worst thing that could happen to you?" Her eyes sparkled with amusement. "I was such an idiot." He shook his head, remembering his former self, the man who measured success in dollars and deals. "I thought I was losing everything. My company, my reputation, my control." Jenna hopped onto the counter, swinging her legs. "And now? Now I know I gained everything that actually matters." He moved to stand between her legs, his hands resting on her waist. "Even when you were testing me with those rumors." "Not my finest moment," she admitted, running her fingers through his hair. "No, but it was exactly what I needed. It made me question everything, what I valued, who I wanted to be." He pressed his forehead against hers. "It forced me to choose between the man I thought I had to be and the man I wanted to become." Through the window, they could hear their neighbors starting their day. Children's laughter, car doors closing, the normalcy of everyday life that Noah had once considered beneath him. "Your assistant called yesterday," Jenna mentioned casually. "She's starting her own consulting firm." Noah smiled. "Good for her. She always was ambitious." "She wanted to know if you'd consider being an advisor." He considered it for a moment. "Maybe. Part-time. I'm rather enjoying our quiet life here." Jenna's face softened. "You really are, aren't you? The great Noah Bennett, corporate titan, happy in a modest house with a garden that needs weeding." "Don't forget the leaky faucet I still haven't fixed," he added with a grin. "Oh, I haven't forgotten. I hear it dripping every night." They shared a laugh, the sound echoing through their kitchen, their real kitchen, where they cooked real meals and shared real conversations. "Your family's coming for dinner next week," Noah remembered suddenly. "Nervous?" "No," he realized, surprised to find it was true. "They've seen the real me now. No more pretenses, no more power plays." Jenna's eyes filled with pride. "You've come so far from that man in the boardroom who thought he needed to marry someone to save his reputation." "I did need to marry someone," he corrected her. "I just didn't know why at the time." The morning light streamed through their windows, catching the simple gold band on his finger. No designer watch adorned his wrist anymore, no expensive cufflinks or power suits. Just Noah, in his comfortable clothes, holding the woman who had changed his life. "You know what's strange?" he mused. "I used to think success meant having everything. Now I know it means knowing what matters." Jenna pulled him closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. "And what matters to you now, Mr. Bennett?" "This," he said simply. "You. Our life together. The peace I feel when I wake up in the morning. The way you look at me like I'm enough just as I am." The evening sun painted long shadows across their modest backyard as Noah and Jenna sat on their porch swing, the gentle creaking keeping time with their lazy momentum. The garden they'd planted together was starting to bloom. Not perfectly manicured like his old estate's grounds, but wild and beautiful in its own way. "Remember our first corporate gala together?" Noah asked, his thumb tracing circles on Jenna's palm. I was so worried about how you'd fit in with that crowd. Jenna laughed softly. And now look at us, having dinner with the neighbors, growing our own vegetables. I wouldn't change it for anything, Noah said, watching a pair of birds chase each other through their apple tree. The tree was young, barely taller than him, but someday it would shade their entire yard. The thought made him smile. They had time now to watch things grow. Your assistant called again, Jenna mentioned. She's still hoping you'll reconsider consulting. Noah shook his head. I don't miss it. The constant pressure, the politics, the endless meetings about meetings. He squeezed her hand. This is real. What we have here, it's worth more than any deal I ever closed. The wind carried the scent of blooming jasmine from the vine they'd planted along the fence. Their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had given them the cutting, along with detailed instructions on how not to kill it. It was thriving now, just like they were. Your family's coming for the barbecue this weekend, Noah remembered. Your father still intimidates me a little. The great Noah Bennett, intimidated? Jenna teased. The man who used to make Fortune 500 CEOs nervous? That was different. That was business. Your father... He paused, considering. He sees right through me, always has. He sees the good in you, Jenna corrected. He saw it even when you were trying so hard to be the ruthless businessman everyone expected. Their cat, a scraggly rescue they'd named Chairman, Noah's idea of a joke, sauntered across the lawn and jumped onto Jenna's lap. In his previous life, Noah would never have considered a pet. Too messy, too much responsibility. Now he found himself sneaking treats to the cat when Jenna wasn't looking. I was thinking, Noah said, watching Chairman settle in, about opening that youth center we talked about. Not for the publicity or the tax write-off, but because those kids need somewhere safe to go after school. Jenna's eyes lit up. Really? You're serious about this? I have all this business experience. Might as well use it for something worthwhile. He gestured to their neighborhood, where children played in front yards and couples walked their dogs. This community has given us so much. It's time we gave back. The sound of laughter drifted over from next door, where the Williams family was having dinner on their patio. Noah remembered how foreign this all felt at first. The friendly waves, the borrowed cups of sugar, the impromptu block parties. Now it felt like home. We should invite Sarah and Mike over for dinner soon, Jenna suggested, referring to their neighbors. Mike's still struggling with that job loss. I could help him update his resume, Noah offered. Maybe make some calls. Jenna beamed at him. Look at you, neighborhood mentor. Well, I learned from the best. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. You showed me what really matters. Not the corner office or the stock prices, but this. Connection, community, love. Chairman purred contentedly as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Noah felt the familiar wave of gratitude wash over him. Here, in this simple moment with his wife, he had everything he never knew he needed. Who would have thought, Jenna mused, that a scandal would lead to all this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the best things that could have happened, Noah replied. I thought I was losing everything, but really. He turned to face her, his eyes full of love and certainty. I was finding everything I'd been looking for,